Man, he's got real Ian Malcolm energy. Absolutely a perfect human hybrid of Alan Grant and Ian Malcolm. No question in mind. That's exactly who he is. Oh, we heard that part. Yeah. Okay, great.
I'm sorry. I tried to turn off my damn phone and I don't know how.
He's got going on with everything.
But you have the Alan Grant look because you've always got those incredible hats.
I will tell my wife that you said that about Jeff Goldblum because she has this thing for him, and I honestly don't get it. I just, my wife will be upset if I'm oozing too much sensuality on screen. So, maybe I got to tone it down a bit.
Time, the ever-flowing river. In the vast record of time that includes all visible life, we divide time into 3 separate eras. Ancient life is in the Paleozoic. Recent new life is in the Cenozoic, and in the center of this is the Mesozoic, the age of the dinosaurs. In the center of the Mesozoic, we find the Jurassic period, when dinosaurs reached some of their largest and most competitive varieties across the planet. Central to the Jurassic is the Morrison Formation, the domain of some of the best-known animals of all time. Creatures like Brontosaurus, Stegosaurus, and Allosaurus, and so many, many more. At the center of the Morrison Formation is a little town called Morrison, Colorado, home to the Morrison Natural History Museum. And at the heart of the Morrison Natural History Museum is Matthew Mossbrucker.
So what was the first question?
The first question is, Matthew Mossbrucker, what's your favorite dinosaur?
That is a question I cannot honestly answer, and I'm going to tell you why. I have a rationale. Because whenever I pick up a fossil, not just of a dinosaur, I want to understand that creature, whatever it was. That piece of anatomy, that how it interacted with the rest of the body, how the animal would have lived, what its world would have looked like, all of those questions, right? The more you get to know these ancient animals, you can't help but to love them all. Except for Spinosaurus. I mean, because everybody loves Spinosaurus. You have to not love Spine. I'm just giving Captain Hart. I've been saving that joke.
1, 2, 3,
it's fine.
4, 5, 6,
7
around me right now.
It's fine. I just felt like picking on you.
That's fair.
Yeah.
No, and really that's the reason that we asked that question is not so much what is your actual favorite dinosaur, but why do you love dinosaurs? And it gives us a sense of kind of your story and your background, which was exactly what we wanted to hear. So that was a great answer for us.
Yeah, I just made that up right now.
Okay, perfect.
When I was a little kid, so if you were talking to little tiny Matthew, which looks just like this but without the beard, my favorite dinosaur when I was a tiny kid was Triceratops. And it was Triceratops because I felt through anthropomorphizing the dinosaurs that it was the protector of other dinosaurs, protecting them from jerks like this one behind me, right? My world is very black and white, little Presbyterian boy. But as I grew older, I would ask kids as an icebreaker, what is your favorite dinosaur? It's a great way to conduct a program, right? I'm talking to kids at the museum, what's your favorite dinosaur? And over the years, dinosaurs with big heads that have human-like body proportions, like T-Rex, do seem to be the most popular ones. I think that has something to do with it. But locked in the Jurassic here in Morrison, Colorado, which is the home of the Morrison Formation, right? We're locked with tiny-headed little weirdos like Stegosaurus and Apatosaurus. And they were down on my, yes, it's a horrible Stegosaurus model, by the way. I find it offensive. I would like you to put it away.
Well, we were going to bring this up later, but as president of the Stegosaurus Anti-Defamation League,
yes,
defend against the theory that Stegosaurus is unintelligent and this is an offensive model. Why?
Oh, geez. The old encephalization quotient thing. Yes, its brain's about as big as my thumb. It's cool, a little smaller. But that's just the size of the wad of nerves and neurons stuffed into that cranial cavity. We do not know how it was wired. we need to remove our mammal bias and look at not just other vertebrates, but other animals, invertebrates too, and look at how sophisticated they can be with how their neurons fit with one another. Like octopi, for example. Look at birds. Birds don't have huge brains. Corvids don't have great big brains. The brains are really sophisticated and they're wired really well. So looking at just simple brain size as a ratio to body size doesn't give us any insight to how sophisticated a dinosaur was. I don't think Stegosaurus was doing its own taxes, but I'm going to be honest, I don't know either.
So you mentioned that the model that Kat has with her right now you find to be offensive and to just be wrong in so many ways.
Do you know what's wrong with it?
Yes, I'd love to know what's wrong with it.
Everything.
Everything.
Okay, it's a pretty model. It's a nice sculpture. The bodily proportions are totally wrong. The front end of the dinosaur, the head's too big, the neck's too short. The forelimbs are too wimpy. These things have Arnold Schwarzenegger. Is that a dated reference? I don't know. Arms and shoulders are really, it's The Rock. Okay, we'll go with The Rock.
There you go.
Their hind limbs aren't as well muscled, but their chests are ovals in cross section, fairly slender, capable of bending side to side. Everybody gets the tails wrong. The plates as ornaments, no, wrong amount, wrong orientation. Yes, they do have a double row, but a single row over the tail. They do alternate across the back. Oh my God, that's even worse.
This one's worse. This one's worse. I'm listening to your checklist. I'm like, okay, well they're alternating.
It's kind of like a Stegosaurus Steenops grade Stegosaur. The plates are okay, still the wrong number. The wrong orientation. The tail is too straight there at the base, and it is too thin. You need to feed that Stegosaurus a salad. It is starving.
So forget everything we know about Stegosaurus because our Stegosauruses are wrong.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, what is that? What was that? Is that?
This is Papo.
Okay.
It is an older Papo, though. I think this is probably a 2015 model. So. And
let me see its feet. Let me see its feet. Let me see its hands and feet. Let's see if those are any good. Nope, that's wrong.
Terrible. It kind of has sauropod feet, doesn't it?
Yeah, but everybody gets sauropod feet right. Here's another thing people see. I'm turning into the grumpy old man of paleontology. That's basically how this podcast is going to turn out.
That is a coveted position, apparently, from the people we're talking to.
I don't know. Oh, it's a coveted position to be an old white guy and have opinions? Since when has that been like a niche? The thing about dinosaur feet is that when we sculpt them, when we reconstruct them, when we even mount them in dinosaurs, it seems to be an afterthought. We need to return to looking at the specimens as articulated or not in the field, and not just looking at individual species, but all the animals that they're related to, because when people put together stegosaur feet, they always do it wrong. Even on the nicest models that I've seen, folks put the hands together wrong. Stegosaurs, even though we only have a couple of partial front paws, they have a pretty big claw on the thumb and two claws on the pointer finger and the ring and the middle finger, and they're about the same size. They're hoof-like, wherein they are squared off at the tip, and then on 4 and 5, your ring and pinky finger, should you ever have a claw there on an archosauromorph? Ever?
From your tone, I'm going to say no.
Say it together. Come on.
Context clues are telling me no.
No, you never have a claw here. Maybe nails, maybe. But that's not a claw, right?
Okay.
So the Stegosaurus does have 5 digits. The pinky is reduced. And that I've seen might be syndactylous with number 4. Phil Center wrote a great paper a few years back reorganizing the Stegosaurus front paw into a sauropod-like paw and having it vertically oriented in columnar, which is supported by track evidence too. He's absolutely right. The hind paws, people screw up too. When you go outside of the Morrison Formation and you look at other Stegosaurs from China, which are very distantly related, or they're cousins, they don't even speak. And then you look at other thyreophorans, the tank dinosaurs, clubtails, the spike-shouldered critters too. They have that basic dinosaur pattern where on the hind paw you have, started with 4, and then it reduces to 3 toes. The toes are short, they're thick, and have squared off claws. The middle toe, which is number 3, Roman numeral 3, is almost symmetrical down the midline. Nice rectangular claw. And then the 2 claws on the outside, number 2 and 4, are also squared off. They're a little less squared off with Hesperosaurus, but more squared off with Stego. Their feet are very unique. I love them. And everybody gets them wrong. So when I see poorly sculpted stegosaur feet, I can't help but to be offended on behalf of stegosaurs everywhere.
I feel like there may be hope on the horizon, though, because with everything around the outside, well, forget the top. Don't even look at the top portion right now.
I can't because I am blinded with rage.
I know. I understand. Okay, here, I'll do this. There we go. It's gone now. It can't hurt you. It can't hurt you.
We'll see.
But the feet on this little guy are in the kind of hoof style that you're describing, where they're the toes.
Better.
The toes aren't, and then the spikes on the tail.
Oh, that's totally wrong.
As I was gonna say, totally.
It's fine.
$5 target. Done with it.
Yeah, the spikes, as they are horizontal to the long axis of the tail, perpendicular, sticking out to the side. We know that that's not true if you look at the base of Stegosaurus tail spikes, and if you look at the articulated tail spikes from 4013 in Wyoming that we've known about for quite some time now. We know exactly where Stegosaurus tail spikes go in the tail, and the order where the big spike in the 4-spike species is closer to the hips, whereas the skinny spike is closer to the tail tip. And in that, if you look at the actual bevel at the base of the tail spike, they're oriented in 2 different directions, with the big spine sticking up a little bit taller than the 2 little ones that stick out a little bit closer to the tail tip. And working on the paper on this now, the tail tip doesn't have neural spines or the little vertebral supports that would allow this tail to stick out straight at the very end. With the weight of the spikes on it, it would naturally protrude, opening up the spikes. But there are chevrons, muscle connections, are implied by these little V-shaped bones below the tail, meaning that the tail tip can change shape under control of the animal's brain, so it can change the shape of the tail spikes.
Fascinating.
Well, it can change the relative shape of the 4 tail spines relative to one another, so it can move spikes closer together to one another on either side.
So if this was the tail and the spikes could somewhat orient with the...
Yeah. If you had the tail, a little droopy tail, and the spikes sticking out, if the tail moves to the left, the 2 spikes on the left are going to move closer to one another. And conversely, if it moves its tail tip to the right, they're going to move further apart from one another. So that whole structure, that rosette of tail spikes, is capable of changing shape.
And what is the benefit of having the tail spikes move like that? Would it make it a better weapon?
Oh yeah, it's for stabbing. Stabbing. So if you want to strike with accuracy, you want to be able to control your weapon, and you do so by changing the shape of this morphing Stegosaurus rosette of spikes. It's
wow.
That is incredibly fascinating. I had no idea. There's also a theory going around that they could actually push blood up into their plates. Now, there are a couple of theories saying that they could use it to change color for sexual dimorphism or whatever, or it was to cool their bodies down. What do you think of that theory? Does that have any merit?
Okay, so how many kids do you think listen to the podcast right now?
A couple.
We have a handful of kids.
I'll take a PG then.
More girlfriend.
So with Stegosaurus plates, when you look at them as associated to the animals through the 9.5 or so million years of deposition of the late Jurassic Morrison Formation across the Western US and a wee bit of Canada, you're welcome. These plates do change shape over time as you crawl up the section. Now, we don't know, because it hasn't been done yet. Someone's got to come up with some proper geochronology of each one of these sites so that we can date them sequentially, because trying to map the Morrison from one basin to the next does not. The areas are too different and too disparate. We can see that there's a lot of variation and change in these critters in their plates. And I think that is the biggest clue, that sexual selection, the pressure to make baby stegosaurs, is the reason why these animals have plates in the first place. When you look at the plates, let's look at them anatomically now. These are osteoderms, or bones that are literally growing within the skin, just like within a modern day crocodile or alligator's hide, right? Where you have a hunk of bone sunk in the hide, anchored by Sharpie's fibers onto the hide so it doesn't move. And then on top of it, it's covered with keratin, right? So the same material my fingernails are made out of, and hair, my fake beard that I clip on every morning.
More Sharpie's fibers.
Oh yeah, it's fine. These plates are definitely being pumped with blood because the blood is nourishing the cells that are making that waxy nail covering over the plates, right? It'd be pretty thick. We don't know how thick it was, but if crocs are any indication, there's a lot going on there. A lot of soft tissue, really hard, that we have yet to find in the fossil record yet. That being said, any broad surface area on an animal's body, like the ears of an African elephant flipping back and forth in the hot African savanna, well, gosh, that can be used as a heat dump because you have a lot of mass and not a lot of skin surface, right? So that could help to cool a stegosaur down in a hot Jurassic day, which I think there were many of. And I don't think that's the primary engine to stegosaur evolution, because we would see more plated dinosaurs if that were the case, if they all needed radiators.
Right.
And it wouldn't explain the variety of change that we see in the shape of these plates over time. It's because Stegosaurus wanted to feel sexy about it.
And
Like a
that's
skinny kid in a puffy.
So this one is trying way too hard. That's what you're saying. This guy's just trying way too hard.
Can you ever try too hard, Jimmy? Can you ever try too hard?
What do you think all this is?
I love my wife. It's very worth it.
Which is what I thought. And so these wouldn't be a great defensive weapon because basically they're just sponge blood-filled cookies to a predator, because they're a piece of bone lodged in the skin, and do you think that they would fall out pretty easily, or
no.
if they were tugged on?
Gosh, no, they're anchored really deeply. Actually, I've got my friend Matt. Matt, say hi. Hi.
Hi, Matt.
Is my moral support. Downstairs, you want to grab the stegosaur plate? Oh, because it's more fun that way. So let's talk about something in the meantime. What else can we talk about with stegosaur plates? Okay, the sponginess, the cookiness, they're actually pretty dense, as it turns out.
This was just based off of a quote that I heard in a documentary that's quite dated. So
Yeah.
it probably came out in the early 2000s. So I'm happy to be completely re-educated about this.
Oh, yeah, they're dense bone, and like I said, we don't know how thick that keratinous theca, that covering was. I stewed it. Oh, you're beautiful, man. So much.
Oh.
So I wouldn't necessarily call it a cookie. This is a nice research casting, fairly thick. It's up to, especially at the base, about, oh gosh, look at that. It's pretty thick. So I can take my fingers here and cover the base of the plate. When you look at the cast here, you can see, think of it as a watermark. So you have a series here of, or a line of fairly rough, bumpy tissue. And then it ends in this little kind of watermark. And this is the part that would be sunk in the hide of the animal. So it'd be weighted down so it It has kind of a neutral balance point and gives you a clue just as to how thick Stegosaurus skin was.
Yeah.
At about 3 inches at least of height over the back. And this cast, and this is true of most Stegosaurus plates, all of these cracks that you see are just that. These are called post-depositional cracks because if you were 148 million years old and you look this good, you'd be lucky. You get wrinkles with time. Just look at my face. And then you'll notice, though, there are these parallel lines. They're actually grooves where nerves and blood vessels would flow to nourish the nail that would have grown over the Stegosaurus plate here. And making a pretty thick structure. Allosaur teeth, with a big plate, this is the big one from the base of the tail. Their teeth are about like this. If I didn't like Matt, I'd make him go grab an Allosaurus. I could, smash it into the plate. But as it turns out, no, I don't think that a predator would necessarily want to go for this region of the body because they would break it.
No.
There's no nutritional value for them here. It'd be awfully difficult to deal with. And that's part of the reason why Stegosaurus had the plates. In my opinion, it's not just for one singular reason. It's not just sexual selection. It's not just as a radiator, a heat dump into the environment. But it does make Stegosaurus look bigger. It's like a skinny kid in a big, puffy coat. Makes him look big and tough and dangerous. It does increase the vertical height of the dinosaur and makes it look a bit more intimidating, I would assume, to a potential rival stegosaur or a predator. Mind games in the Jurassic. Things were not simple back then.
Did they
No.
grow at a rate consistent with the rest of the dinosaur as they would get older from their little stego pup phase? Or
Gosh,
did they
that's a
grow
great
into their
question.
plates?
I don't think we have enough data to answer that question. We do have only a couple of juvenile stegosaur plates, Dinosaur National Monument and Como Bluff, Wyoming, that general region. The plates do seem to change shape a little bit, maybe get more pointy, which you do see with Crocostioderms too. But how those correspond in time and making sure that there are coeval population controls, which means we want to make sure these dinosaurs were, living at the same time and making babies at the same time.
Right.
Because if we are jumping ahead 500,000 years and the plates are a different shape, well, duh, because things change with time, right? So I don't know. I think that's a frontier. Understanding that kind of that early reproductive history of Stegosaurus is a huge hole in our stego literacy.
But you're taking some of the first steps into filling in some of those gaps with your work with the baby stegosaur trackways.
Ooh, I love that. That was a beautiful pun / dad joke. You are my best friend now.
Jimmy is really good with the dinosaur dad jokes.
That was great. Yeah, the crew and I did find a series of stegosaur tracks here at the museum, both literally on site after a fossil salvage operation. They're all from a historic dig site called Quarry 5, which is where the first stegosaur skeleton was ever found. And on the surface of some boulders that had been dislodged for quite some time, they were being used as a safety girder to keep people from driving off the side of a local road. We salvaged these blocks almost a decade ago, brought them back to the museum to try to excavate the bones out of the hard sandstone, maybe to find more pieces of the first Stegosaurus skeleton. Instead, we found just about everything else, but including tracks, which was a great surprise. It turns out the geology of these individual blocks suggests that they were part of a stream channel that filled up fairly rapidly with debris as we get lumps of mud mixed from the bottom to the top, and bone too from the bottom to the top. And then on the very top layer, you'll see a thin veil of clay, a clay drape. And on that surface, we have a multitude of different types of tracks. Some that are common, three-toed carnivorous dinosaurs or ornithopod tracks, and some that aren't so common, these being stegosaur tracks, both from adults and subadults, and even a few babes.
That's incredible.
It's an accident. You just find what you find when you go outside. They find you. It's not the other way around.
Most of the best paleontological finds are accidents. We were just talking to Dr. Caleb Brown about the Nodosaur Borealopelta discovery, and some of their best discovery was actually when they accidentally cracked that dinosaur open and got to see the stomach contents. Complete surprise. So it was a blessing and a curse.
Well, yeah. Discovery is a glorious accident, and we have to give that accident credit. And sometimes when we do, break things, we do find other things. I mean, even the process of fossil preparation obviously is a destructive process where we are playing God and selecting what stays and what goes at our discretion. So, which is why I think we should keep more rock on the fossils that we do. That's another story for another time. But
you're talking about the Carnotaurus skull.
I'm talking about every fossil, man.
Every fossil.
Oh yeah. Here's a good example, right? So I went back to the Peabody Museum looking at the collection of Jurassic dinosaurs that were collected here in Morrison back in 1877, with the aim to try to figure out what exactly was collected and what remains in their collections. And part of the reason why I was able to correlate specimens to dig sites is the unique lithology of each one of the Morrison dig sites, because rock was left behind. Because in most cases, these fossils weren't even prepared yet, or they were prepared leaving rock behind. That rock is data. You need to leave it behind. If you are air abrading your fossil to the point where it's shiny, please stop.
Interesting.
So there is that.
No, this is excellent. I mean, I've already learned so much about Stegosaurus that I had no idea, and you helped kind of dissolve some of the myths around Stegosaurus that I even believed in. So
very much so.
Very happy to have you here.
It's really my pleasure being here. My love for dinosaurs like Stegosaurus is that these are animals that we think we know, we take for granted. We always look ahead for what's the newest weirdo that's popped up out of the ground, right? And how does that change things? But we don't do enough time going through museum collections or old dig sites and asking, what did we miss the first time?
Yes.
And I think we need to do more of that.
Which brings me back to one of the questions we were going to ask you in the beginning, and that was, how did you become fascinated with dinosaurs? I read an article that said that you loved dinosaurs before Jurassic Park even came out, and you were telling all the kids in your class about dinosaurs, and they were kind of like, dinosaurs aren't cool until Jurassic Park came out, and it really connected science with the movie monsters and created an interest. Would you talk about that?
Yeah, I think, when it comes to folks' love for dinosaurs, I do have a lot of gripes with Jurassic Park, but they're just, anal retentive science man gripes. But really, the franchise has been very good for generating conversation and awareness about paleontology, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, our interpreters here at the museum every day answer the same questions they have been for the past 2+ decades, that that dinosaur Dilophosaurus didn't spit. No, it didn't have a frill. There's no evidence for that. And that sort of that suite of questions. But I caution folks to not get too fatigued of those questions. Jurassic Park is a cultural touchstone that allows for museum folks and paleontologists to find common ground with people who, they've been to a museum a few times in their life. They've seen a couple dinosaur movies, but they're at least curious enough to come back and ask more questions. So we need to respect that and use that bridge, use that opportunity to do something that I call the educational rope-a-dope. The idea is that you present people with an idea that they're familiar with, right? Like Velociraptor. What did the Velociraptor do in the movie? Let's say it's size. It's a great big dinosaur, right?
Yeah, 6-foot turkey. Right. Like, no, turkey-sized turkey. But continue.
Right. But you say no, even though it's not that big. Here's a Utah raptor, and straight up, there's a Utah raptor. There it is. And then you can talk about how science changes as we learn new things, and how much we've learned about raptors over the past 20 years, and the questions that we still have, because I think it's a mistake when we communicate about science to say that we have all of the answers. We know what these things are for. We have all of these answers. Well, whenever a scientist is speaking, they're coming from a position of knowledge and perceived authority, no doubt. But those people are also, really should be, open to new ideas, new evidence that they can incorporate into their worldview. As fossils are being dug out of the ground all the time, and our ideas about these animals are going to change, and we will all be wrong at some point. You're not doing science if you're not wrong from time to time, right?
That's my favorite thing about paleontology.
You need to normalize
Everything
being
is
wrong.
right until it's wrong.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yes, because without art and without movies and without all of these incredible individuals that help bring life to these specimens, we would just be looking at bones and we would be looking at words on a page. And these things really help everybody else, because we love dinosaurs. We would love them even if it was words on a page. But everybody else, it really helps them connect and resonate with these things and helps them, it gives them life, which is so beautiful that you're able to look at Jurassic Park and say that this is how we bridge the public with science. I think that's incredible.
Every day is Jurassic Park Day.
Every day is Jurassic Park. Matthew. Oh my God. Every statement is just like best friends. This is so fantastic.
I'm in competition. He's
no, not at all.
gonna be
No.
posted
God, I'm going to adopt the two of you.
Oh God, that's great. This is so good. Have you seen some of the new stuff that they released this week for the new Jurassic movie?
I have not, because I have a blood pressure problem and I yell at the TV when I see things that are wrong.
Understood.
Yes.
Understood.
I just listen to podcasts now, and I'm...
Makes sense. I will say though that some of the things that we have been upset about, the day is starting to dawn again on some new things.
My heart has been broken before with that series.
And so are their wrists.
Very short rope.
I like the first two, and then
Yeah.
the other ones they just kind of lost me.
No,
Oh,
all
come
good.
on. What about the third? The third is good.
You know I have the utmost respect for you, Catherine. I think we've established that rapport at this point. And I would be doing our friendship a disservice if I would say that I like it.
Very fair. It's a fun monster movie that has a very inaccurate Spinosaurus, but at the time that's what they thought it looked like, and I will love the heck out of that. And they also assumed that it was semi-aquatic, which was great because now that's been proven. And you can't beat the scene of when they all run to the fence and they're like, how did you find us? And it was like, your stupid cell phone ring. And then you turn around and that Spinosaurus is staring you in the face. That hits me right in the heart. But I agree. The first one is the best of the Jurassic Park.
The only accurate thing I really feel about that movie is when, in the first movie, when they first encounter the living Brachiosaurus, and Sam Neill, Alan Grant, the character, has basically a panic attack and collapses and falls on the ground. That's totally what I would do. So that's the most accurate part of the whole movie. But it is a good, I
head between your legs.
Really is a great cultural touchstone that
Yes.
to talk about fossils with people that aren't as fossil literate as we are.
If you look at the movie as a monster movie and not an accurate depiction of dinosaurs in their ecosystems, you can still have a good time. If you overanalyze it, you're not going to have a good time.
I've been wanting to find out more about your work with the ceratopsians, particularly with the ones that stay local and the ones that go on vacation. Because when you think of Triceratops, you have this idea of the big, mighty herding animal, potentially, and that might be a pop culture thing as to whether or not they would actually live in the big family groups. But the idea of them staying in one spot versus being more migratory or migratory, and that's something that you've done some work in. So I'd love to find out more about what we know now.
We don't know much. And that's,
All right, next question.
there you go. I don't know. We are processing a microvertebrate site in Wyoming right now that has every year produces hundreds of shed large ceratopsian horned dinosaur teeth. These are adults and sometimes juveniles. And last summer we got a baby shed tooth the size of a grain of rice. I had to glue it to a toothpick, which is a very scientific thing to do just to make sure I didn't lose it in the field. And our work is just beginning to try to quantify, at least with those lance formation, big horned dinosaurs like Triceratops and Torosaurus, whether they were endemic or migratory. I don't know yet. I don't have a dog in this fight. I don't care. I could be wrong. They might have stayed in one place. They might have moved around. And I'm sure what applies to Triceratops might not apply to Torosaurus.
Mm-hmm.
It sure as heck shouldn't apply to Centrosaurus. So I don't know. Wait and find out.
Based on your experiences, so your role is that you are the director and the main curator for the Morrison Natural History Museum.
That is correct. That is what I do here. So we are a very small municipal museum. We're a department of the town of Morrison, Colorado. And we have a private nonprofit foundation that raises money to enhance the museum. So we are a public-private partnership. The fossils that we have here are either local, represent things that were local. We have a very narrowly focused statement. And what we try to do with what we have, which is we have a very, very small building, is try to engage people in personalized programs, kind of tailor-made tours, if you will, as they tour the museum with us, answering their questions, kind of going down the rabbit holes of their curiosity, allowing them to touch casts and select fossils appropriate, and even taking them into the lab so that they can pick up a neuroscribe and work on the bone, really sterile matrix area, far away from a bone. But it's cool. Because they get to understand what it's like to clean a fossil. We really want to break down those barriers of access between folks that know what they're talking about and folks that have questions. So everyone here will greet people at the door. Everyone here, regardless of your position, will run the cash register, clean the toilets, but also conduct the programs or help out in the lab. The bar to entering the museum is set at showing up. So if you want to join the crew here, that is literally all you've got to do is show up, and your interest will direct how we will train you, whether it's in the lab with fossil preparation or on the floor as a paleontology interpreter, helping out in collections. We'll see how it goes. We want to try to make the museum as accessible as humanly possible to people.
I'm sending you an application right now.
That's wonderful.
No, you don't have to. You're already hired.
Oh, sweet.
You're one of
Awesome.
us. So it's
Perfect.
It's that hard. So there's that. Now, my role as director is very different than my role as curator. And over the past few years, I spent a lot more time in the role of being the director, the administrator, coming up with programs, fundraising as much as we can with the foundation, and planning and trying to maintain a budget, which is fun. Let me tell you what, that's why you go into paleontology, right? Fundraising, fun stuff. And now we get to dabble with my role as curator, whether that's in the lab or working on papers that I've clearly been working on since the Jurassic that I have yet to get out. But during the pandemic, we were able to do a little bit of internal restructuring, and we were able to get caught up on years worth of work, specifically with collections and getting things reorganized there, so that I'm starting to chip away at my little backlog. And being a middle-aged guy, interested in self-improvement, I did learn that some of my natural habits, which are beneficial in a small museum environment where you have to, think quickly and move from one topic to the next. That and other aspects of my personality are something they call ADHD. And after going into a little bit of treatment for that, and coming up with some new strategies. When it comes to certain projects, like sitting down and writing a technical paper, I can actually do that. And I can sit and focus on tasks that were really challenging for me before. So between that and the best museum crew, I would put our crew up against anyone. And I'm not just saying that. I really believe this group of people is the best. In the next 5 years, we're going to do some really cool things. We have a lot to say and a lot to contribute to the scientific community, and a lot to contribute to the community just in general in the form of education. So we are just getting started.
What are some things that we think we could put together in the Museum of the Future?
In the Museum of the Future, I would like to see them decentralized. I would like to see museums pop up in neighborhoods like you would see Starbucks. I want to see those museums to be both locally relevant and inclusive of each one of the neighborhoods they belong in. I want people to be able to travel from these little neighborhood museums from one to the next. And maybe some slightly larger museums that have some site relevance, like a Mammoth Dig site or something of that nature, right? In order to include more people in museums, we need more museums, and we need to think about restructuring this institution in such a way where the bar to participate is as simple as showing up.
So you've got a stand behind you. I've got a little stand in front of me. The sclerotic ring that you put in there.
Because I don't like empty eye sockets, but also when we talk to kids, and you have kids that already know everything about dinosaurs, you have to get them to admit that they don't know something in order for them to listen to you.
See, the Tyrannosaur doesn't obey any set patterns or park schedules, the essence of chaos.
Yep.
So you'll ask them where the nose goes, obvious where the nose goes, right? Ask them where the eye goes, I made that even more obvious now. But then you ask kids where the ear goes, and they freak out, and they put it in the post-orbital fenestra, which is that big opening here behind the head. And of course, that's not where the ear goes.
Why? Did I go too fast? I go too fast. I did a flyby.
That's an expansion area to allow the jaw muscles to expand as they clamp down on the juicy Triceratops thigh.
Okay. Okay, now freeze your hand. Don't move. I'm going to do the same thing. Start with the same place again. Right. Which way is going to roll off?
Let's say back. Same way.
Same way? Same back? Change.
So this allows us to point out where the ear actually goes, which is at the little notch behind the head, beneath this bone called the squamosal and behind the double-jointed quadrate.
Why? Because tiny variations, the orientation of the hairs on your hands,
Hey, Ellen, look at this.
the amount of blood distending your vessels, imperfections in the skin.
Imperfections in the skin?
It wasn't until I was able to admit that I didn't know everything and that I had questions. It's okay to be wrong. It's okay to ask questions and get answers. And then it's not just knowing where these anatomical structures go. It's how do we know that? What's the epistemology behind that? How do we know that the nose goes where it goes?
There's another example. See, here I'm now by myself talking to myself. That's chaos theory.
That's a long story for why I put this sclerotic ring in the eye of a T-Rex, but it was because of programming. I wanted to be able to start a conversation with something weird that people don't normally see so that I could drag them into some ideas that they were unfamiliar with.
That's fantastic.
Here's a question that I've been dying to learn more about, and I'm going to pronounce this word wrong, so you can correct me. What is the purpose of the holes around the lip line, the foramina? Do you think that they are... Is it foramina?
It is, and I was not going to correct you even if you were wrong. That's rude.
Yeah,
and
what is the purpose of the foramina?
Okay, so the individual structure is a foramen, and if you have more than one, they're foramina, even if you have five. Anatomy joke. So these are for...
If you didn't make it, I was going to.
we are the same, Jimmy, we are the same. So you have plumbing for nerves and blood vessels that flow through the body nourishing the skin that was here, creating
Yep.
little lip-like structures, which you don't just see on the dentary, the name of this tooth-bearing bone on Rex. Kids see that at home. There you go. But if you look at the chinny chin, oh, look, there's a line of them too down here. I wonder, I don't know this to be true, I wonder if T-Rex had a soft tissue structure, almost like a pouch under its chin. I don't know. There's plumbing.
That is an interesting question to ask. So, T-Rex had lips, yes or no?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yep. And here's the evidence. I mean, it's your foramina, all the plumbing here. They're not big smoochy lips,
No.
but there's enough to protect the teeth.
Yeah. Very cool. Thank
So
you.
going back to the accurate dinosaur models then, if there is a big pouchy structure, that means the most accurate Tyrannosaurus Rex ever made was the Lost World Bull T-Rex that would swallow action figures? With the
I actually
big
wonder-
throaty thing?
I really wonder if that's like an expandable structure on the bottom of their throat that would aid in swallowing oversized objects, because
Like a giant pelican.
yeah, well, I mean, you've got thesis here. The chins don't fuse in Rex, right?
Right.
The dentaries don't fuse, and there's the capability of a bit of motion. And then when you look at the side of the jaws, this is weird for people that are familiar with mammals. Here, between the syringular, the angular, the dentary, you see this big opening? Part of it's
Yes.
pathologic. That's a boo-boo.
Yep.
That's a boo-boo. That's a boo-boo. But that's not. This opening allows for the expansion of the jaw to swallow an oversized object.
Kind
So,
of like similar to that of a snake.
snakes are totally rubber jaws compared to this thing. Yeah,
So
I mean,
similar, but not really. Not
no,
really.
literally snakes. I mean, they're just, the bone is almost just, rubbery and elastic. Similar in the sense where it's the same complement of bones, capable of the same type of motion, but the snake's jaw will physically, because it's such small, thin bone, can physically move, like with the little garter snakes that I have running around the museum, and the occasional rattlesnake too.
The expanding Tyrannosaur lower jaw, I still remember the first time I saw that was a diagram in the Dinosaur Heresies, where it's the T-Rex straight on, and then you see the jaw close, and then when it opens up, the whole thing just this massive maw just spreading out. It's horrifying enough as it was. It's so cool to see it in process.
It is. We try to, I think when we make pop culture depictions, whether it's in art or animation of dinosaurs like this, we give them a million constraints, like rigid jaws. And I have yet to see any animation of a T-Rex swallowing something that is a little oversized, allowing its jaw to expand and flex. So maybe someday someone will do that, like my friend Matt sitting across the room right there. Yeah.
You have a Tyrannosaurus Rex skull on your forearm. The tattoo of a T-Rex there.
Yeah. Yeah, I did that.
Was that always there? Was that there before? Yeah. Yeah,
You know,
so which T-Rex is it?
Okay, this is AMNH 5027, so this is the first T-Rex skull found. And I use it in the field or sometimes in the lab when teaching, because kids still really like T-Rex, right? And when we talk about T-Rex, there's usually questions that have to do with teeth. And if you notice, one of the teeth is shaded in red right now.
Yeah.
Right side, maxilla 1 tooth, because on Wednesday we found a tiny baby T-Rex tooth, 2 centimeters, just for the crown, definitely a shed tooth, and 22 centimeter skull, my general estimate. And so I've been working on that guy. It came to me in 2 pieces in different baggies, and I was able to reunite them. And it's a wonderful little specimen. That'll be a part of a paper coming up hopefully next year. So we have some nice little baby Tyrannosaur teeth to share with the world.
Oh, that's really sweet.
I think Jimmy is going to faint.
No, I'm good. I'm excited. I'm always happy. I think it's brilliant that you filled in the tooth with a piece of Sharpie. This was something I don't have any tattoos yet myself. I always thought that if I was going to get them, I was going to either get the bones recovered from Stan, because that was the T-Rex at my museum as well. So I was always a huge fan of that guy. And then a scale bar. So that way, if I ever need to figure out how long something is, like, oh yeah, this baby Triceratops is this big. Or I was going to do a connect the dots and then just use Sharpie to fill it in.
I do that with my freckles anyway.
There you go.
I thought about a scale bar, but I'm worried about shrinkage or inaccuracy, and my partial German heritage, and my maternal line, being toilet trained at gunpoint would not allow me for that sort of inaccuracy on my body.
You never get a skeleton put on your body before it's completely found, is what I've learned. So at least you don't have an inaccurate Spinosaurus on you.
No, that actually, you did the right thing, and don't change it. And here's why.
Oh, of course not.
Because of course, that's something special to you, and it has a lot of meaning that you don't even need to share with the world, and that's cool. But it also will show people that science is unfinished. We're constantly digging up fossils and paleontology, refining our ideas, and it changes. And your tattoo, in that sense, is a time capsule of how we viewed Spinosaurus at that time. And I guarantee you we're not done refining our understanding of those North African Spinosaurids. Not done at all.
And that is almost exactly what I tell people when they ask me if I'm going to change it. And this is the Spinosaurus that I grew up with. This is the Spinosaurus that I knew. And 3 months later, Nazar Ibrahim released a paper saying that it had a different look and tail.
You know what? That's cool, though. There's nothing wrong with that at all. Very nice dinosaur. This is the only one I got, and I got the geocoordinates of the museum in case they find my body in the field, so they know where to stick me. So
put you on display.
Brilliant.
Yeah, one of these days.
So, coordinates aside, if someone wanted to find out the museum, more about it, how to get to it, how to take part in the grand adventure that you're putting out, how can people find information about the Morrison Natural History Museum?
Well, the Morrison Natural History Museum is online, so you can either go to mnhm.org, and if you can't remember that, that's fine. If you look us up on Google, you can follow our Instagram or Facebook. We're sometimes on Twitter for major announcements, but not so often. But really seems that we have most of our engagement these days on our Instagram page. Coming up real soon, the end of this month, which is June of 2021? I don't know, it changes every year. We are getting out in the field, revisiting some of our old dig sites, and we'll post updates from the field as we go. I'm kind of horrible recently about updating our social media because I've been playing with too many fossils. So if you really want to know what's going on here at the museum, you got to come visit. Knock on my door. I'll show you what I'm working on.
Fantastic. Invitation accepted. We're going to do this. This is great.
Anytime.
And if somebody wanted to find out more information about you personally, where could they find that?
Oh, I'm totally boring. Nobody wants that. So
well, I follow you on Instagram, and your Instagram is pretty great.
My Instagram is literally an echo chamber for the museum's Instagram. So there are some old pictures from some traveling that I did when I shot a pilot for a show that didn't go anywhere. And then I just used it as an echo chamber for the museum. So there's some weird pictures of me in Russia. I don't want to talk about it. And then lots of dinosaur pictures. So it's fine. You can follow one or both. I monitor them both and answer questions, so it's cool.
Terrific. Matthew Mossbrucker, thank you so much for spending your time with us here. We've absolutely had a blast and a half learning about all these amazing animals that you study, meeting Matt and seeing and having our minds blown on Stegosaurus and all these different things here. This has been an absolute wonderful time. Thank you so much for being with us.
The pleasure has been all mine, and I know that's what guests are supposed to say, Jimmy, but I really do appreciate the invitation and your tolerance of my myriad of technical difficulties here in Morrison. But it was great meeting with you and Catherine, and you guys keep in touch. And when I have some of these papers rolling out and new finds, I'll let you know. Maybe I'll let you know first, since I'm pretty sure that we're probably related in some way.
See,
if not,
we're now best friends, and this has been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and I'm so happy, and I would love to talk to you again once those things come out. And I will definitely be coming down to visit or apply for a job. You haven't heard the last of me.
No good. Anytime. You guys, you come visit anytime. This is your museum home, too, even though you haven't been here yet.
Thank you
We
so
will.
much.
Thank
All
you
right.
so much, Matt.
You guys, take care.
You too. Bye.
All right.
All
Bye.
right, bye.
And done recording.
Yeah, absolutely a perfect human hybrid of Alan Grant and Ian Malcolm. No question in mind. That's exactly who he is. Oh, we heard that part.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
I'm sorry. I tried to turn off my damn phone and I don't know how.
No, we were just saying that we were saying this in the first gap in between. He's like, man, he's got real Ian Malcolm energy. He's got the one on with everything.
But you have the Alan Grant look because you've always got those incredible hats.
Oh, dude, I love my hats. I'm not going to lie. I just made my own filled hat this year, and I will tell my wife that you said that about Jeff Goldblum because she has this thing for him, and I honestly don't get it.
But the part when you were talking about how getting people to, change their perspectives on things and using the ability of the tattoo to help see that science is evolving, I'm cutting that in with the scene when he's holding your hand in the car talking about the imperfection in the skin because, my God, man.
Well, I mean, I just my wife will be upset if I'm oozing too much sensuality on the so maybe I got to tone it down a bit.